So what do we do with that then? So do we first have to figure out what our relationship is on a psychological level with these addictions, with our food, for example? If we're just focusing on weight loss to start with, if you were to be coaching someone, would you try and understand their propensity to binge, to have that sort of like dopamine craving, or do you focus somewhere else?
I kind of say, all right, like walk me through a typical day for you. Walk me through a typical week. Where are your struggles really at, right? And one of the things we call it the BioLane way when we kind of teach our coaches is we do coaching with, you have to have two things are critically important: accountability with empathy. Because if you're just the accountability coach, the drill sergeant who's, most people, if they screw up, they've beat themselves up more than anybody else. I know I'm that way. I'm sure you're that way. So you don't need to beat them up again. The empathy portion, so if you're just beating somebody up, if you're just holding them accountable without empathy, you just become the drill sergeant. And what happens is people end up tuning you out, or they're not honest with you anymore because they don't want to constantly feel like they're failing, right? The empathy portion, if you just have empathy and you're saying, I'm so sorry that happened, that's so hard, I understand, but you're not holding them accountable, there's no impetus for change, right? So it takes both. Mm-hmm. And so the way I'd often coach, like let's take somebody had a binge, something like that. The first thing I'd say, I understand why that happened. That's really hard. What was the antecedent to this? Like what started this, right? Okay, now let's look at, if we had to go back and do it over again, what are some things we might be able to do to put some barriers, right? So I had one client, he's a hedge fund manager. And when he started with me, he was binging pretty much, I would say almost every day. And I said, okay, where do you find that this is happening? And he said, well, usually it's after everybody's gone to bed. And, I just find myself in the kitchen and it just happens. So, okay. So it's not reasonable to lock yourself in your room, right? But what if we just did a few things to increase your mindfulness, right? Put a post-it on the cabinet where you keep the junk food, right? Not saying anything nasty or anything, but I just said, write down, am I hungry or am I just upset? Then on your door, right? Lock it from the inside. It's not, it doesn't keep you from going out, but you have to unlock it, right? Like you're having to turn your brain on, right? And the more barriers you can put there, the better it gets.
The more sort of mindful moments you can have where you have to kind of make a decision and you come out of autopilot. Because I notice whenever I have my binge moments, which happens once in a while, it is like unthinking.
Yeah.
It's just like a robot has taken over.
Exactly. And with this particular client, right? He'd have a rough day at work, hedge fund manager, very stressful job. I say, okay, if you've had a rough day at work, first thing to do when you're driving home, say, man, I've had a tough day at work. This is usually where I'd have a binge session. Like say it out loud, like name it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Sometimes just naming it is enough to stop it. I mean, not the same thing, but I struggle with, I'm sure you know as ADHD, during conversation, I have something to say, I want to say it, right? And I'll end up cutting people off and making them feel bad. And so I still have that inclination, but now I'll go, if I start, I go, oh, I'm sorry. I jumped in, please finish, right? Mm. And so just like calling it out to yourself can make a huge difference on changing the behavior. That which gets monitored gets changed.